This small railway station, preserved by a group of enthusiasts in Buckinghamshire, was typical of hundreds of similar stations up and down the country, often miles away from the villages which they served. Villages with wonderful names like Constable Barton, Daisy Hill, Stobbs, Riddings, Spooner Row and Boggerthorpe. These were the villages of the Branchline, a network of rural railways meandering gently through the English countryside, often with an old tank engine pulling two or maybe just one coach, the passengers barely paying for the price of the coal. In fact, very few of these local rural railway lines made a penny from the moment they opened in Victorian times to the day they closed under Beeching in the mid-1960s. Not all the stations had buildings quite as grand as these here at Quainton Road. They were generally wooden, but very well looked after and very well kept up. There'd be a garden tended by the staff under the supervision of the station master. And there was a waiting room which would always be lit by gas. There'd be a coal fire burning in the winter. They were clean but austere. There was never any vandalism or graffiti in stations like this. And although you might have to wait a long time, you could do so in complete safety. At the back of the station would be the sidings, where the daily mixed pickup goods train would arrive, bringing maybe 2 private coal wagons for local merchants, or a goods van containing a tractor or foodstuffs for the farmers, or maybe just the major's luggage up from Southampton. Then it would pick up the empties and chug away to the next station down the line. But by the end of the 1960s, 5,000 miles of track and 2,750 stations had closed. Those that remained behind were functional, unmanned, served by diesel multiple units. The garden beds had gone, and the day of the mixed pickup goods train had disappeared forever. In fact, Quainton Road isn't exactly typical. This was the first, or if you like, the last of the stations on the old Metropolitan Railway line from Baker Street, which now ends 20 miles up the track at Amersham. In 1973, Sir John Betjeman came to Quainton Road to film for his unforgettable BBC programme, Metroland. 11 years earlier, he stood on a different footbridge, looking down at a different line, while filming his first and less well-known documentary, which was simply entitled Branchline Railway.
Evercreech Junction, Somerset. It was to be the Clapham Junction of the West, the place where one line branched away to Bath and collared the Midland trade, and the main line ran to Highbridge and collared the coal from Cardiff. That Pickwickian figure in the frightful hat is, I'm sorry to say, me talking to the station master. But a station master's life, that's something worth living. And you can see why Evercreech Junction wins the prizes for flowers and tidiness. The level crossing gates are worked from the signal box, and here comes the 1232 from Sturminster Newton on her way to Bath, calling at Evercreech Junction, change for Glastonbury, Shatwick and stations to Highbridge. And as we say goodbye to the station master, please notice that on expenses I'm travelling first. Forget motor cars. Get rid of anxiety. And here, to the rhythm of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, dream again that ambitious Victorian dream which caused this long railway still to be running through deepest, quietest, flattest, remotest, least spoiled Somerset. This is the line we'll be travelling on. Once it was part of a grand scheme to unite Wales and the southwest, and even to stretch to France. The scheme failed, and the main line went along there on the right to Bath and the Midlands. And here's our own bit of line, reduced to a branch, and even that has lost its twigs to Wells and Bridgewater. The Great Western was the first friend the Somerset Central ever had, and it's the Somerset Central line we're travelling now. It's rather a relief to be drawn by steam through this uneventful countryside, and just to hear the noises we knew as children. It's the sad road to the sea. West Pennard Station, built of the local limestone. And one of the reasons why the Great Western liked this line a century ago was because it was also broad gauge, like the Great Western used to be. Oh, by the way, there's Glastonbury Tor, and how nice to see it without a foreground of villas and petrol stations. In a second or two, you'll find we come to a broad bridge, and as you look through it, you can see how the track was once broad for broad gauge. Glastonbury Station. I suppose the promoters of the Somerset and Dorset hoped that this place was going to become a vast industrial town. As a train, when it stops, waits here for 2 minutes, I always like to get out and have a look. There's always something to see in a railway station. Let's have a look at the waiting room. Gas light, solid furniture, Georgian tradition carried on into Victorian times. I say, I hope you're enjoying this journey as much as I am. You rarely see much more country once you've got out of the railway station from a train than ever you do from a motor car. No hoardings, no road signs, no lorries in front of you, and no neurotics hooting behind you. This is Sedgemoor. Do you remember Hardy's poem, The Tramp Woman's Tragedy? It's written to a sort of railway meter, and it fits here. From Wynyard's Gap, the livelong day, the livelong day, we beat afoot the northward way we had travelled times before. The sun blaze burning on our backs, our shoulders sticking to our packs, by Fossway fields and turnpike tracks, we skirted sad Sedgemoor. For months we padded side by side, aye, side by side, through the great forest, black moor wide, and where the parrot ran. We'd faced the gusts on Mendip Ridge, had crossed the Yeo unhelped by bridge, been stung by every marshwood midge, I and my fancy man. This quiet part of Somerset has got its industries besides farming, cutting withes for basket making, and the railway carries a lot of the peat which is cut on Sedgemoor. The villages are a long way from the station. This is the village of Shapwick, grey limestone. I suppose they hoped there'd be houses all along the road from the village to the station 2 miles off. And at Eddington and Birtle, they built a railway hotel by the station. I suppose they thought you'd need a rest before the walk to the village. Go away, you brute, you enemy of railways and comfortable travel. You know, I'm not just being nostalgic and sentimental and unpractical about railways. Railways are bound to be used again. They're not a thing of the past. And it's heartbreaking to see them left to rot, and to see the fine men who served them all their lives made uncertain about their own futures and about their jobs. What's more, it's wrong in every way, when we all of us know that road traffic is becoming increasingly hellish on this overcrowded island, and that in 10 years from now there'll be 3 times as much traffic on English roads as there is today. What will the West Country be like then? How will we get anywhere in summer, except by railway? How will we see any country, except from a train? I think it's more than likely that we'll deeply regret the branch lines we've torn up and the lines that we've let to go to rot. I mean, even in America, they're already building new suburban railway lines. Here's High Bridge, the end of the passenger line of the Somerset and Dorset. So I suppose I'd better get out. The old Somerset Central Railway, which later became the Somerset and Dorset Joint, started here on its long journey to the English Channel in 1852. And High Bridge is a piece of railway history. It's also a railway contrast. So come and see the older station. There it is, with a diesel hurrying through it to the west, to Bridgewater and Exeter. One of Brunel's original stations, with the broad eaves and the cut stone for the doorways and the windows. But now, cross over the bridge and come and see the slightly younger station, High Bridge of the Somerset and Dorset Joint. You see, High Bridge was the crew of the old Somerset and Dorset. And there is the war memorial to the Somerset and Dorset men who fell in the 1914 war. So this place was the headquarters of the line, and I suppose that's why it is that the seats are rather special cast iron. If you want to see why it's the crew, come and look at the works. There they are. The turntable is still used for turning engines. That's an old Midland engine made in Derby. It used to turn, that turntable, the blue S&D ones. The Midland owned the line when the Somerset and Dorset was given up. And then the Great Western came on. And by the way, what's that? Oh yes, that's an old push and pull Branchline GW car, smashed by Teds from High Bridge. Where did it go from, I wonder? Between Dawlish Warren, Starcross and Exeter? Between Bourne End and Marlow? Or Castle Bar, Park Holt and Ealing Broadway? Or was it on the Staines branch? Or the Uxbridge branch? And I wonder what city gents planned their holidays as they strap-hung and looked at these sepia photographs and wondered where to go. I can't tell you, because this car's now been smashed to bits since I was there. People hate anything well made, you know. It gives them a guilty conscience. This was the carriage works. And here they made the S&D coaches. I can just remember them. And now let's go to the loco works. That little tank engine was made here at Highbridge and given its royal blue livery. This shed is still used for maintenance work. And there's a Great Western engine. The Western region still runs the line. Oh, let's go inside this store if we can get in, yes. I wonder what they kept here. Neep oil for the lamps, coupling rods, or phosphor bronze. Well, it was all part of the family life of a friendly little railway, of men who lived here in Highbridge, in these brick terraces, in a faded Swindon, a forgotten crew. I think you ought to see the goods side of the line. There's still a lot of goods traffic, and that means the roads are that amount clearer. And if we go on a goods train, we can take a look at Pill, which was once a station and is now a halt, with no one to look after it. I doubt if there's a quieter, sadder sight in Somerset than Pill, when the train has left and it sinks back to silence. See the fringe of Sedgemoor from the footplate of a goods train. The line is single track, and the driver hands the staff which locks the points and signals to a porter. Now the track behind us is secure. Remember I told you that the Great Western and the Somerset Central were friends a century ago when the line we're travelling on was first built? Well, now that we're coming into Highbridge, you can see an extraordinary survival of that long friendship between two railways which were formerly broad gauge. The Great Western. There is its main line, from Bristol to Exeter. Running through Highbridge Great Western Station. And there, right across that important main line, runs the little branch to Highbridge Wharf and Burnham-on-Sea of the Somerset and Dorset joint. The line is used for goods only now, and we'll follow the goods train through the town of Highbridge to its lonely end. Regardless of roads and motor traffic, we'll cross the town and come to Highbridge Wharf. There it is, the place the Somerset and Dorset hoped to establish as an enormous port. Here were to be Welsh colliers from Cardiff, and who knows, perhaps Somerset colliers taking Somerset coal to Wales. The rattle of cranes, the noise of shunting, goods trains puffing with heavy loads of coal for Somerset, Devon and Cornwall. This was to be the Barry of the southwest. Up here somewhere is where the colliers and cargo boats were to unload. The hope was partly realized. That's what it's like now. Highbridge Wharf, your hopes have died. They flow like driftwood down the tide, out into the open sea. Oh, sad, forgotten S&D. But let's not be too mournful. There was still another hope of prosperity for this part of the Somerset and Dorset Railway. Excursionists. In 1858, the little line to Burnham was opened, and the station is still there. Huge crowds were expected, and it's worth looking at the station in some detail as an untouched example of early railway architecture. It's got a roof over it, like a big terminus. I couldn't get into the waiting rooms and the booking hall because they were locked. But the Southern Railway, which was one of the many companies that operated this line, renamed the place Burnham-on-Sea in a hope to attract railway traffic. The line still runs beyond the station, out to meet the sea. There was a pier at the end for steamship passengers crossing the Bristol Channel. Welsh people, after a holiday in Bournemouth, could run merrily back to Wales, and vice versa. Now, all that remains is this, and the gradient going down to the sea. The railway bought its own paddle steamer in 1884, and in 1905, the Barry Railway in Wales ran steamer excursions over here to Burnham. All gone, all gone. Transport, more than anything, changes a place. See how the railway changed Burnham. First the railway hotel, then boarding houses of the 1880s, Bristol style, built with railway prosperity, and Victorian hotels on the seafront, and slap-up buildings along the seafront of Victorian times, and signs out to attract the motorists of today. Villas for retired folk as permanent residences. In the side roads, houses where golfers lived in the 1920s, and bungalows for our own age of the small car. Burnham, with its shining sands, was a Georgian town before the railway came. Let's have a look at it. Beautiful seaside place. The air on the sands and on the pier is like wine. Burnham-on-Sea. The Somerset and Dorset Railway brought you prosperity a century ago. Burnham-on-Sea, in 10 years' time, when the roads are so full of traffic, we'll all be going by train again. You'll be grateful you still have a railway to your town. Don't let Dr. Beeching take it away from you.
But Dr. Beeching did take it away. Not just that branch line, but the whole of the Somerset and Dorset railway system closed down on March the 6th, 1966. But worse, much worse, was to follow, something which even now true railwaymen can hardly bring themselves to think about. The final disappearance of steam from Britain's railways in 1968. A mere 17 years before, such a proposition would have been unthinkable. As a whole new range of 12 classes of new standard steam locomotives designed by the ex-LMS team of R.A. Riddles for British Railways, was coming out of the works. The first of these engines, a magnificent Class 7 462, was, on the last day of January 1951, named Britannia at Marylebone Station by the then Minister of Transport, Alf Barnes. The event was considered important enough for the BBC to include the story in one of its early editions of television newsreel.
Coinciding with the news of a cut in train services as part of the campaign to save coal, there comes to London for its naming ceremony the first of British Railways standard locomotives. To the experts, it's a Class 7 462, and into this locomotive have been incorporated many of the best ideas from engines of the era before nationalisation, of famous classes like the LMS Royal Scot, the Great Western Castle class, the LNER Streamlined Pacific class. And the Southern Railway's Merchant Navy class. Those 4 engine classes are some of the most famous on the rails today. And together with the best features from the 400-odd other designs now running on British railways, they have helped to make up the new standard loco. Work on it began some months ago, when designers from the various regions got together and pooled their ideas. Once these had been translated into the blueprint stage, it was not long before Britain's largest railway workshops were on the job. And beneath the steam hammer at Crewe, it was all change for the standard loco. Standardization was all-embracing. Everything was standardized, from the big boiler to the smallest spare part. In that way, servicing and repair would become a much simpler process. And most important, there would be standard wheels with precision balances to ensure that the engines could travel on all the main lines in the country. And with barely a flutter of excitement, a revolution in engine design was accomplished. Amid the clatter of Crewe, the standard loco was taking shape. A new giant of the permanent way was got ready to take its permanent place in the engine spotter's notebook. At the time, most of the design was still a much-guarded secret, and all that was revealed was that there would be something new and something old. And together, this would add up to Britannia, the name given to this first example of the engine maker's standard design. Earlier this month, the standard loco, then still nameless, went out on test. A dynamometer car filled with a staff of experts was attached to it to check its performance. And after more than 2 weeks of running in the north of England, number 70,000 was declared fit for service and came south to London and Marylebone Station to be named. There, on Tuesday, the Minister of Transport, Mr. Barnes, put the newcomer officially into action. Before uncovering the brass nameplate, Mr. Barnes said that this latest British engineering product was the first of 160 standard-type locomotives to come off the assembly lines this year. And, said Mr. Barnes,
comes in 1951, when we are going to tell our story of the past, the present, and demonstrate our faith and confidence in the future in what we are now describing as the Festival of Britain. And people, we hope, will come from all over the world to see evidences of the story of this country in the past. And when they do, railway men will be interested, wherever they come from, will be interested to see how we are carrying on the story of railways which we invented and made known to the world. And when they look at this locomotive, ladies and gentlemen, I think they'll be able to say, as I've said in the past, Britain still leads the world with a steam locomotive. And I have very great pleasure now and pride in unveiling this locomotive and naming her Britannia.
a ministerial pull at the curtains uncovered the new engine's nameplate, and there for all to see was proof that Britannia now rules the rails as well. To complete the ceremony, the minister stepped onto the footplate and, accompanied by railway officials, rode out of Marylebone Station at the controls of Britain's newest engine. And Britannia, in her shining coat of dark green, gave of her best. Britannia is the largest of 12 engine types which are to be standardized by British Railways. And this week she goes into official service for the first time, hauling express passenger trains in the eastern region.
By a strange coincidence, one of the other locomotives included in that newsreel, Merchant Navy Class 35016 Elder Fife, was also the subject of another newsreel shown on a very significant day for British Railways, March the 18th, 1960. the day when the last steam locomotive made by British Rail was named Evening Star at Swindon. The BBC didn't see fit to record that poignant moment, but what they did do to commemorate the beginning of the end of the age of steam was to send a cameraman on the footplate of that Merchant Navy class 35016 as it headed the Atlantic Coast Express.
The engine we'd picked out was one of the country's top express passenger locomotives. Unlike so many others built before the war, it's been improved and modified only in the last few years. One of the massive and powerful Merchant Navy class named after famous shipping lines. We came here to see preparations for the journey. The work done at Nine Elms wasn't only for the mechanical condition of the engine. In contrast to others on British Railways, 35016 had been cleaned and polished till she shone in the March sunlight and was ready to set out and pick up her train at Waterloo. Some of the passengers there had come for that particular train too. So had we, the 11 o'clock West of England Express, the 8th, as it's often called and known by those who travel on it, from the initial letters of its name, the Atlantic Coast Express. Among all the passengers last Tuesday, some may have been thinking of higher fares to come. But one who needed no ticket that day was our cameraman, Brian Johnson. He was making the run from Waterloo to the first stop, Salisbury, on the footplate of the engine. 11 o'clock is the scheduled time for departure, and 11 o'clock it is, a faultless start. Driver Saunders was concerned about the boiler pressure. It was now a question of getting up and over the gradients without dropping any more on the schedule. And the crew of 35016 achieved this, though it's the sort of thing that passes the passenger by. By now, the fireman shoveled over 2 tons of coal. But the last climb of the journey is behind him at Branchline Station. A downhill run now for the last 10 miles to Salisbury, a stretch where trains like this could reach speeds well above the permitted 85-mile-an-hour maximum. But no such speeds this time before driver Saunders has to slow down on the approach to Salisbury, with the satisfaction of knowing that no more time's been lost. Salisbury is one of the many places in the country where more and more of the Branchline diesel trains are making their appearance. For this work, they are the final answer in the modernisation plan. On most of the main lines, electric power will eventually take over from diesels. Almost like a bus service, with their regularity and cleanliness, an absolutely predictable source of power, and much pleasanter for the driver. But in the skilled hands of men like driver Saunders and driver Clements, who was taking the Ace on to Exeter, these fine steam locomotives will keep many famous trains running for some time to come.
Sadly, Southern Pacific 35016 no longer exists, but one of her sister engines, Branchline, does, and is steamed regularly. Of the other engines you've seen in this video, 7000 Britannia is preserved by the Nene Valley Railway, and a second in that class, 70013 Oliver Cromwell, is at Bressingham. Of the 999 steam locomotives produced for British Railways, between Britannia and Evening Star, only 32 still exist, and many of those are not in full working order. Railway fanatics are a very biased lot. Indeed, some think Great Western engines are the best. But to many people, the Britannia class and the big 21009Fs are among the finest steam locomotives ever produced on British railways. Since British Rail was so keen to get rid of its 18,000 steam engines, we and future rail enthusiasts owe a great debt of thanks to the thousands of volunteers who give up their weekends and their holidays to restore to working order the surviving locomotive from the great days of steam.